There's also like another part of that though. Like, do you believe we should be able to just sell fentanyl? Probably not. You know, like if laissez-faire was taken to the extreme, you'd be able to sell nukes and stuff, which
They're pretty cheap right now, actually.
you know, but my point is like, it's true that, you know,
Pakistan is having a sale.
it's true that things might thrive if you don't like control it as much, but it's also true that the amount of danger that that thing poses as opposed to the benefits of the economy is staggering. Like the difference between them is not 1-to-1.
Well, I brought this up to mention the BBC program that showed that section on Marx. It's a 3-part, and so there's actually 2 other philosophers, if you're considering economics as a significant part of philosophy, that we didn't even touch on because I just focused on Marx, because Marx is part of the text that I built this course on basically years ago. Who else? Who else can we? Adam Smith. I've got him and Hume face to face. One of my favorites, actually. It's a good book, by the way. I read books. I don't know if that's still a thing or if that's going away. It's kind of an interesting.
I mean, it's still a thing, but I think it's likely to go away.
Depends on the book.
Yeah.
And the quality of the video. I mean, one of the things that these BBC videos, which are actually fairly old already, have done is they've really made it much more interesting because you could see, you know, like the cave, you know, when you go back and you look at where
Dover. The most dangerous
See if
man
I
in
can-
Europe is about to arrive on Britain's shores. His preachings are so incendiary, he's been forced out of his native country.
I keep losing where I'm
Only
at.
liberal Britain.
So, for example,
In his time, minimum pay for proles meant maximum profits for bosses, and any bosses who did choose to pay more usually went bust.
this is on Marx.
He thought there'd always be downward pressure on wages, and that
He
wages
never
would
actually
come
entered
down to
any of the
minimum wage
mines,
to enable
but-
their survival. They couldn't go lower than that, otherwise the workers would die. But he thought that it had pressed down to that minimum. The reality, of course, has been the opposite. It has been a continual advancement in wages, year in, year out, decade in, decade out.
So,
Marx was wrong. He thought it would all get so bad, the workers would overthrow the system. Yet even as he was writing, reformers were beginning to get rid of the worst employment practices. Capitalism got kinder, not nastier, but
so who wants to read about it when you could watch a video like this that shows you so much about it? Videos are powerful. And nice sound. And
From a computer science standpoint, it contains much more data.
pretty cool. So who else am I leaving out? I was thinking really one way of doing this today would be to go to my list that I had and talk about some of the, so we have talked about Charles Murray. We haven't really talked about Roger Scruton at all. He just died relatively recently. I really liked him. January 2020. It seems to me like it was more recent than that, but I guess 2020 isn't that far back. But he's been really interesting. A lot of interesting books, especially on aesthetics. And again, the BBC used him as a spokesman for a series on aesthetics, where he's, at museums talking about the different art and so on. So that's a really cool a person that is absolutely a philosopher. But Thomas Metzinger, I had mentioned him. His primary interest is in the mind and the self as a process or a set of processes, so that we, in a sense, remember his main book is Being No One, as if the whole idea that you're a stable self-consciousness, that's persistent over time, is a real misnomer. It's really much more complex than that. So it's better for us to really think of that as, not true, but instead to think of you as a set of processes that are constantly in motion, and how are they influenced. Remember, I also mentioned Douglas Hofstadter that way, because he writes about the same characteristic of the self.
Ship of Theseus type stuff?
Pardon?
Ship of Theseus type things?
Well, in some ways that metaphor still gives you the feeling that you end up with the same boat, even though the parts are all different. The thing is, we're changing in ways that mean, if I go back and look at my baby pictures, I'm not the same boat. It's not just that the boards have changed. Other things are going on, besides that. And our complex systems are also interacting with other complex systems, so that the idea of our being social is very important to who we are. There was an article in the paper just the other day where they've announced, I guess the medical community has announced that loneliness is as bad as smoking cigarettes for your health. And part of their concern is that since we've had COVID-19, people have kind of been living alone and just engaging with other people through the virtual world as opposed to face-to-face. I've seen lots of that. So that was another issue that just came up. So how much of us are dependent on our interaction with a group of peers and so on. So that's part of that too. And for Douglas Hofstadter, remember I showed the picture of his cover where he's got the video camera videoing itself so that you get this strange loop, which was the title of the book, where he's holding his hand out and it looks like it's just going, like this. That was when video cameras were brand new and a neat thing that you could plug it in and see what you get when you, create a loop like that. But you know who you are, and if you're, say a person is feeling depressed over whatever's going on, and you feel like, the world is against you. Well, if you're aware that your psychological feelings are actually up to you to manipulate, and you don't like feeling depressed, you can decide for yourself that, well, I'm going to make myself feel happier. How? By, singing songs that I like, or, having a nice coffee that makes me feel, chipper, or...
So does he believe that your feelings are up to you? That you can control them?
I think that's the existentialist point of view. Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. I mean, the Übermensch idea is that, once you realize you're in charge of yourself and in charge of the world, that the world is going to, you're the one who's perceiving the world, the universe is your universe, you can change it. You have the power to change how you perceive it. And so, now, how much of that are you going to be able to change? How much of your experience will be a result of your own decision on how you're going to appreciate what's going on? Darn good question. I mean, that's clear. If it were clear that you could totally change how you perceive the world and make your life happy just by deciding to do it, boy, that would be pretty popular. We would have a lot of people using that. But as it is, we've got people that are actually happy killing themselves.
Well, we don't really know how they feel at the end of it because they're not able to tell us their end result.
I think it is.
So what about assisted suicide? Like people do ask to be medically.
Well, that's a different
I feel
story.
like that they are like assisted suicide situation. I feel like that's when they're in like so much pain physically that
Yeah.
they're kind of like, I would just rather not feel this pain anymore in that aspect than mentally. Because I feel like if they do be in a position where assisted suicide is something that they actually consider, it's because of more physical pain than mental.
Of course, the most famous suicide, I think, that I know of is Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, that was.
And Romeo is all screwed up because, the monk, Friar Lawrence, was trying to get the message to him, hey, she's not really dead. And he didn't get the message, so he gets there and dang, he,
Yeah. it's too
takes
late.
poison and kills himself. And she wakes up just too late. And, instead of looking at it, said, you idiot, and kicking him, and walking out,
West Side Story.
that would be, to me, that would be, the much smarter thing for Juliet to have done. Instead, she drunk all and left no friendly drop to help me after, and then so she says, oh, happy dagger, here is thy sheath, there rust and let me die, and she stabs herself to death. She didn't have any cause to commit suicide from a health point, or,
Yeah, no, that one was more of a situation. It was kind of like the point of it was that they were so in love, that their love drove them to do it because they were.
and it
being
was
allowed to
puppy love.
express
It was puppy love.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the kind of love that you get married, you're all happy, and the next month you're like,
Well, yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't know it was going to be like this.
Well, yeah, exactly. That was the point of the story was that they weren't given time to fully explore if it was puppy love or not. They weren't allowed to have a relationship to explore those.
Talk about
relationships.
interpretations of art. Yeah,
Yeah,
there we.
Also, straight up, this was written by somebody from a long time ago, so the bearing it should have on modern society today, in my opinion, is minimal. And also, they're fictional, so
It might have been based on some actual star-crossed lovers.
yeah, but might have been and are miles apart.
But I mean, theoretically speaking, they went to our confession that two people might not have had like a murder suicide in that context.
I'm not saying it hasn't happened, I'm more saying that speaking on the intentions of a fictional character when written by Shakespeare is a little weird to apply to a conversation about assisted suicide just based on, it's even though she was in emotional pain and that's what caused her to kill herself, and the point of the story was, oh, that shouldn't have happened because they weren't given time. That's true, but that's also something people say like every single day in high schools. Like, my high school had something called You're Not Alone Club, and there were still people in my high school that killed themselves,
Oh no, I didn't. I wasn't talking from context like she wouldn't have done it if she had given time. I'm saying is that the situation that they were both in caused that excitement of the intensity of that moment drove their action. because like logically speaking, like neither of them were suicidal people, but they were also two, I guess, star-crossed lovers in a in a moment or a situation where they weren't being allowed to engage in that. And point of, at least in my interpretation, the point of the play was that because that they were being restricted so much, and they were in a situation where they couldn't communicate anything or feel like anything like on a normal consistent basis like most people are. They weren't able to naturally develop that. They were forced to make very rash actions and decisions in that context. A lot of things happened was passion, like puppy love, intense passionate love. That's the whole point. They were passionately in love with each other. They were passionately passionately going against the family. They were people died as a result. It was just a bunch of just a moment of passion, and in that moment of passion, there was tragedy. Yeah. So it wasn't that it wasn't that she was I mean I have no clue if Julia was gonna do that afterwards. But in that moment, that's what drove her out.
And the scary thing is a play like that, or the various movies made about it and so on, have actually inspired people to kill themselves.
Yeah.
As a result of the, it's like, wow, Juliet, I want to imitate her.
Causation correlation.
Uh-huh.
Causation correlation. Yeah, there's causation correlation with that. I mean, that does come up every once in a while in media.